At 12 years old, Eleanor Mercedes looked into the eyes of the young Apache boy and made an impossible promise. "One day, you're going to be my husband." He laughed at her. 15 years later, she would return as one of the most powerful women in the country. But back then, she was only a child, standing in the burning desert where everything began. The golden dust swirled in the hot Mexican air the first time Elena saw the boy who would change her life forever. Her blonde hair glimmered like sunlight against the dry landscape, a sharp contrast to her sun-kissed skin from long days spent on her grandfather's ranch. Her heart raced the moment her blue eyes locked with his, dark, deep, and endless as a moonless night. There he was, Towley, 16 years old, tall and strong, his feathered headdress swaying with the wind. His defined muscles moved with the grace of a wildcat as he tamed a spirited horse. Something awoke inside Elena, something both terrifying and exhilarating, an inexplicable certainty. "You're going to be my husband one day," she whispered, her words carried by the wind straight to Towley's ears. The young Apache stopped what he was doing and turned, his gaze meeting hers with such intensity that time itself seemed to halt. For one infinite moment, the world around them disappeared. The heat, the neighing horses, the distant voices of the workers. All that remained was the invisible thread between them, glowing like gold, woven by fate itself. Elena noticed something flicker across his face. Surprise, curiosity, perhaps recognition. Then, as though a spell had been broken, Towley laughed. It wasn't cruel, but amused, almost tender, as if he were humoring the childish fantasy of a little girl. "Little Elena," his deep voice carried in the desert air, "you're still a child playing house with your dolls." The words struck her like invisible whips, burning her cheeks with shame and determination. The workers nearby laughed as well, their Spanish jokes blending into the hot wind. Eleanor's eyes burned, not with tears, but with the silent promise she forged at that very moment. "You'll see," she murmured, her voice low yet loaded with conviction that even startled her. The words felt like prophecy, etched into the air as if carved in stone. Towley stopped laughing. Something in his expression shifted. The way she spoke, the fierce light in her blue eyes, it sent a shiver down his spine. For an instant, he didn't see a 12-year-old girl before him, but a force of nature disguised as a child. It was like watching a storm that hadn't yet discovered its own power. That night, Eleanor lay awake, staring at the stars sparkling like diamonds above the desert. Her small fists clenched around the sheets as she made a vow that would shape the next 15 years of her life. "I will grow," she whispered into the darkness. "I'll become strong, beautiful, and powerful. And when I return, Towley, you'll remember this night." The night wind seemed to carry her words across the mountains, as though the universe itself bore witness to her oath. In the room next door, her grandfather Diego smiled, having overheard her whispered words. He knew that fire in her eyes. He had seen it in the mirror when he was young, the same fire that had shaped him into the respected man he became. "My daughter," he murmured softly to himself. "Destiny has great plans for you." He knew Eleanor was no ordinary child. There was something in her, a strength not yet fully awakened. Deep down, in his wise old heart, he sensed that her promise to the stars would someday come true in ways even Eleanor could not yet imagine. The following morning brought the news Eleanor had always feared. Her mother, Carmen, had decided to take her back to the big city, away from the ranch, away from the desert, away from Towley. "It's time you had a proper education, sweetie," Carmen declared, her words striking Elena's ears like a prison sentence. The girl felt her world collapsing, yet inside her chest a fire blazed brighter, the same fire born when Towley had laughed at her. This would not be a simple farewell. It would be a promise of return, echoing across the years to come. Eleanor ran across the dry fields, her golden hair flying like a banner in the morning wind, searching desperately for Towley. She found him by the river, training with his bow, every arrow piercing the target with deadly precision. When he saw her, a playful smile curved his lips. "Here to say goodbye to your marriage fantasy, little Elena?" The words should have hurt. But Elena was no longer the same girl she had been the day before. Something had changed overnight. A steel-like determination had taken root in her 12-year-old heart. "I'm leaving today," she announced, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside. "But I will come back, Towley, and when I do, I won't be the little girl you know anymore." She stepped closer, her blue eyes blazing with such intensity that the young Apache stopped smiling. "I'll return as a strong, independent, powerful woman, and then you'll see. I wasn't playing when I told you that you would be my husband." The words fell like a declaration of war against fate itself, each syllable heavy with conviction. Towley lowered his bow, staring into her eyes, and for the first time he saw something he hadn't noticed before, a fire burning with the intensity of 1,000 suns. For a fleeting moment, his world trembled. He felt as though he were staring at his own reflection, someone carrying the same wild force that pulsed through his veins. "Elena," he said softly, pronouncing her name without his usual teasing tone. "The world is vast, full of challenges. You will change, you will grow. But I—" He faltered, searching for the right words. "But you what?" Eleanor pressed, stepping even closer. His heart raced in a way he could not explain. The morning sun crowned her golden hair with a halo that made the world itself look different. "You'll change too, Towley," Eleanor continued. "But deep down, you already know the truth. You know we're meant for each other." Her small hand brushed against his strong arm, and a spark of electricity shot through them both. Towley's certainty wavered, shaken to its core. As Eleanor turned to leave, she stopped and looked back one last time. 15 years, Towley. Wait for me. 15 years. Her voice carried like an ancestral chant across the fields. She walked back toward her grandfather's house, each step pulling her farther away from the boy she would love all her life, each stride tightening her resolve to return transformed. Towley stood frozen, watching her leave. For the first time in his young life, he felt an emptiness in his chest he could not explain. When Elena finally vanished from sight, he whispered into the wind, 15 years. He didn't know if it was a farewell or a prayer. The city swallowed Eleanor whole, like a monster of glass and concrete, yet she refused to let it intimidate her. In the first months, she cried in secret every night, longing for the golden desert, the warm wind carrying the scent of wildflowers, and, above all, the dark, endless eyes of Towley. But her tears were not weakness. They were fuel, feeding the fire that burned inside her. Every morning, Eleanor woke with a mission, to become the woman she had promised to be. She enrolled in the best schools, learned new languages, and trained her body and mind with the discipline of a warrior. By the time she turned 13, she was unrecognizable compared to the shy child who had once left the ranch. Her mother, Carmen, watched her transformation with a mixture of pride and worry. "Eleanor, why do you study so much? Why push yourself to exhaustion?" Carmen often asked. Eleanor would only smile, enigmatic, never offering a full answer. How could she explain to her mother that every book she read, every mile she ran, every skill she mastered was a piece of a larger puzzle, one that would eventually lead her back into Towley's arms? It was a 15-year plan, crafted like a work of art, nourished by a love that grew stronger with each passing day. By 16, Eleanor spoke Spanish, English, and French fluently. She practiced martial arts, played the violin, and had become one of the brightest students of her generation. Yet what impressed people most wasn't her talents, but her presence. There was something magnetic about her, an inner force that drew attention wherever she went. Her blonde hair had deepened into golden tones that shimmered under any light, and her blue eyes carried the same fierce intensity. But now they also held the wisdom of someone who had transformed pain into determination. Eleanor knew she was on the right path, even though the day of her return was still far away. During her high school years, invitations to parties flooded in. Boys confessed their love. Suitors asked her to date them. Everyone wanted the perfect girl. But Eleanor turned them all down, kind yet firm. Her friends didn't understand. How can someone so beautiful and talented be so selective? Is there someone else? They teased. Eleanor always answered with a mysterious smile. Yes, there is, but he doesn't know it yet. It was a half-truth. Towley knew he had heard her promise. But most likely he had forgotten, dismissed it, treated it as a child's fantasy. That was about to change. At 17, Eleanor began working at a consulting firm, where her intelligence and charisma quickly caught the attention of her bosses. Soon, she was earning her own money and making ambitious plans for the future. Every cent she saved had a purpose: to finance her university education, to build her independence, to ensure that when she returned to the desert, she would arrive as a successful and powerful woman. At night, alone in her room, Eleanor would gaze at an old photograph of her grandfather's ranch and whisper, "Just a few more years, Towley. Just a few more years." When she turned 18, she entered university to study business administration, but her true curriculum went far beyond textbooks. By then, she was fluent in 5 languages, skilled in multiple martial arts, capable of playing 3 musical instruments, and had cultivated a network of contacts that opened doors everywhere. Most of all, she had blossomed into a dazzling woman with a magnetic aura that made both men and women stop in their tracks. Eleanor knew she was ready for the next stage of her plan. The countdown of 15 years was accelerating, and she could almost hear destiny calling her name. At university, Eleanor shone like a rising star. She was president of the student council, captain of the fencing team, and editor-in-chief of the campus newspaper. She collected achievements like trophies on a golden shelf, yet every victory was only another step on the ladder leading back to Towley. By 21, she had become a vision, 5'7", her golden hair cascading down her back like liquid sunlight, her blue eyes hypnotic to anyone who dared meet them. Her body, sculpted by years of disciplined training, radiated both strength and femininity, leaving men speechless and women in awe. She was exactly what she had promised to become for that boy of the desert. During her university years, Eleanor built a small but solid personal empire. She founded a consulting firm that advised mid-sized companies, invested in stocks with uncanny wisdom, and wove a network of contacts stretching across the country. But what impressed her professors most wasn't her achievements, it was her clarity of purpose. "Eleanor has a goal far beyond what we can see," her mentor once said. "She's not just building a career, she's building a destiny." The secret Eleanor carried was simple yet powerful. Every decision, every move, every triumph was part of her greater plan. When the 15 years were over, she would return not as the rejected little girl, but as a force of nature impossible to ignore. By the age of 22, Eleanor Mercedes was unstoppable. She already owned 3 companies, spoke 7 languages, and had traveled through dozens of countries, accumulating experiences that would have made even people twice her age envious. Yet all of it, every degree, every investment, every triumph, was simply preparation. Preparation for the moment when she would once again look into Towley's dark eyes and say, "I told you I'd come back." During those years, Eleanor stayed in touch with her grandfather Diego, who still lived on the ranch. Through him, she learned of Towley's life. He had become the leader of his tribe, respected for his wisdom and strength. At 21, he had married a young Apache woman named Itzel. Together they had 2 children. But 3 years later, the marriage ended when Itzel left with another man. Towley was never the same after that, Diego confessed during one of their phone calls. He closed himself off, became more serious, more solitary. People say he never spoke of marriage again. Eleanor's heart tightened at the thought, yet mixed with the ache came a spark of hope. Perhaps destiny was clearing the path for their reunion. By 25, Eleanor had become a legend in her field. Young women sought her advice, eager to follow in her footsteps. Powerful men tried to woo her with business partnerships that were, in truth, veiled attempts to get close to her. Business magazines published glowing articles about her, describing her as the young entrepreneur revolutionizing the market. She accepted the praise with elegance, but her heart remained fixed on a single goal. Only 2 years remained in her 15-year promise. 2 years to prepare for the encounter that would define the rest of her life. During her meteoric rise, Eleanor received countless marriage proposals from wealthy businessmen, influential politicians, and men who offered entire fortunes simply for the privilege of calling her their wife. She refused them all with the same simple answer, "My heart already belongs to someone, even if he doesn't know it yet." The phrase became legendary in her social circles, sparking endless speculation about the mysterious man who held Eleanor Mercedes's heart. If people had known the truth, that he was a solitary Apache in the Mexican desert, the very man who had laughed at her when she was just a 12-year-old girl, they never would have believed it. But Eleanor knew, and she also knew that the most powerful love stories are the ones that defy all expectations. By 26, she stood at the very peak of her personal and professional glory. Her company had become one of the most respected in the country. Her fortune guaranteed her absolute freedom. Her beauty had reached an ethereal perfection, as though all those years of discipline had sculpted not only her character, but her very appearance. Her golden hair flowed in silky waves down to her waist. Her sapphire blue eyes sparkled with intensity, and her body, honed through years of training, carried the elegance of an athlete and the allure of a queen. But more than her looks, it was her aura that captivated those around her. She radiated power, mystery, and femininity, a combination that made even the most powerful men feel like uncertain boys in her presence. It was then, at the height of her triumph, that Eleanor made the decision she had been planning for 14 years. It was time to begin the final stage of her return. At 26, Eleanor decided it was time. The years of preparation were over. Now came the final act of her long-awaited return. She sold 2 of her 3 companies, keeping only the one she could manage remotely. Every move was calculated. She didn't just want to come back. She wanted to make her return an event impossible to ignore. Her first step was to buy a magnificent property only a few kilometers from her grandfather's ranch. It was a modern hacienda, a fusion of contemporary elegance and traditional Mexican design. Construction and renovations lasted 6 months, and during that time, rumors spread like wildfire through the villages. "A wealthy, mysterious woman is building a mansion near Diego's ranch," people whispered. "They say she's young, dazzling, and chose this place for a very special reason." Eleanor knew those whispers would reach every ear in the region, including Towley's. At the same time, she began weaving herself into the life of the community, always from the shadows. She funded social projects, sponsored cultural festivals, and created jobs for dozens of families. Yet, she did it all through intermediaries, carefully maintaining the image of a powerful benefactor whose face no one had seen. It was a strategy designed to create curiosity, to build expectation, so that when she finally revealed herself, her appearance would be unforgettable. Eleanor knew that as the tribe's leader, Towley would hear of every move, every rumor. He would wonder who this mysterious woman was, and she wanted him to. Then came the call that changed everything. Her grandfather's voice trembled with a strange emotion. "Elena, today Towley asked me something unusual," Diego said slowly. "He wanted to know if I'd heard from my granddaughter, the blonde girl who used to play at the ranch so many years ago. He told me he's been dreaming about her lately, that he can't stop thinking about the promise she once made him." Eleanor's heart pounded wildly. After 15 years, he still remembered. He was still haunted by her words. Her plan was working even better than she had imagined. It felt as though the universe itself was conspiring in her favor. She decided it was time for the final move. Eleanor commissioned a dress unlike any other, a masterpiece that blended modern elegance with traditional Mexican elements. Gold to highlight her hair, deep blue to make her eyes shine like jewels. It was more than a dress. It was a story, a living symbol of transformation, power, and a promise fulfilled. Her stage would be the annual San Miguel Festival, an event where every community in the region gathered, including Towley's tribe. It was the perfect place for their long-awaited reunion. Standing before the mirror in her new hacienda, Eleanor whispered to her reflection, "The time has come. Towley, get ready to see what that little girl has become." The annual San Miguel Festival unfolded beneath a sky full of stars, as though the heavens themselves had been embroidered for that night. Eleanor arrived at the height of the celebration, timing her entrance with surgical precision to ensure the greatest impact. She stepped out of a sleek black convertible, and the effect was instantaneous, almost devastating. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. The music seemed to dim. Even children froze in place, staring wide-eyed at the vision before them. There she was, Elena Mercedes, now 27, transformed into a figure that defied reality. Her gown of gold and sapphire flowed like liquid light around her sculpted body. Her blonde hair gleamed like strands of molten gold beneath the colored festival lights, and her blue eyes carried an intensity that made grown men feel like teenagers again. She walked through the festival with the grace of a queen among her people, greeting faces that had once known her as a timid girl, but now barely recognized her. "Eleanor? Our little Eleanor?" they asked in disbelief. She only smiled, radiating a warmth that mingled perfectly with her magnetic power. Every step was calculated, every smile deliberate, every word spoken with the precision of someone who had turned her life into a living work of art. And then she felt it, his presence. Even before she saw him, she knew Towley was there. The crowd shifted, parting ever so slightly, and finally she saw him. Time itself seemed to stop. There stood Towley, now 31, even more striking than in her cherished memories. His muscles bore the definition of maturity. His face still carried that raw beauty, but now etched with the wisdom of a man who had lived, loved, and lost. He wore a blend of traditional garments with modern touches. No headdress adorned him now, but his presence commanded respect and admiration all the same. Their eyes met across the crowd, and the night split open like a bolt of lightning. 15 years vanished in an instant, and once again they were the young Apache boy and the blonde girl, bound by an impossible promise beneath the blazing desert sun. Towley froze, his gaze locked on Elena, tracing every detail of the woman she had become. It was impossible, unreal, and yet exactly as she had vowed. The 12-year-old girl who once said, "One day you'll be my husband," now stood before him as a goddess, a force of nature, making every other man around them seem like a pale shadow. Eleanor walked toward him, each step pulsing with the weight of her promise, each heartbeat synchronized with his. The crowd faded away. Only the two of them existed, past and present, colliding in a moment of pure magic. "Hello, Towley," Eleanor said softly when she finally stood before him. Her voice carried 15 years of longing, determination, and unwavering love. "I told you I'd come back." The words were simple, yet powerful enough to make Towley's knees weaken. He looked into her blue eyes, the same eyes he had once tried to forget, and found the same fire, now multiplied by years of experience and strength that made her utterly irresistible. "Eleanor," he whispered, disbelief and awe shaping her name. "I always keep my promises," she replied, stepping closer, closing the distance between them. "And the promise I made to you still stands." Her words rang in the night like a challenge to fate itself, proof that 15 years had not dulled her resolve, but sharpened it into an unstoppable force. Towley's world tilted on its axis. The girl who had once been a child was now a woman who could have chosen any man in the world, yet she stood before him, renewing a vow forged in innocence and upheld with the will of a warrior. It was the moment that would define the rest of their lives, and both of them knew it. Towley tried to resist, his voice trembling with a vulnerability he rarely revealed. "Eleanor, you don't understand. So much has happened. I married, had children, divorced. I'm not the boy you knew. I carry wounds, scars, responsibilities." His words reached for distance, but his eyes betrayed him, burning with the devastating attraction he felt for the woman who had fulfilled an impossible promise. Elena's smile held the calm of someone who had lived, waited, and understood. "Do you really think I don't know?" she asked gently. "Do you believe I spent 15 years transforming myself without following your life from afar? I know about Itzel, about your children, about the nights you spend alone, staring at the stars, wondering if anyone in this world truly understands you." Her words struck him like arrows, each one proving that she knew his soul better than anyone. "Then you also know I'm not easy to love," Towley murmured in a final, faltering attempt to resist. "I am proud, stubborn, bound to my people's traditions as both weight and honor. And you are a woman of the modern world, successful, independent. Why would you limit yourself to a man like me?" But even as he spoke, his eyes could not leave her. The festival lights turned her golden hair into fire, and her smile blended tenderness with absolute resolve. Eleanor laughed softly, the sound like celestial music in the night. "Oh, Towley, you still don't understand, do you? I didn't transform in spite of you. I transformed because of you. Every book I read, every language I learned, every company I built, every powerful man I rejected, it was all for this moment, so that I could look at you and say, I choose you. Not because I have no other options, but because, out of all the options in the world, you are the only one who makes my heart beat this way." The truth in her words shattered his defenses, melting his last resistance like ice under the sun. Around them, the festival continued, but they seemed wrapped in an invisible sphere where only their hearts existed. Towley reached out, his hand trembling, and gently touched her face. His rough fingers contrasted with her soft skin, and his voice broke into a whisper. "You really did all of this for me?" Eleanor closed her eyes, savoring his touch. A single contact that awakened 15 years of dormant feelings. "For us," she corrected softly. "For what I always knew we were meant to be together." When she opened her eyes again, he saw in them a love so deep and genuine it nearly broke his heart, only to mend it in the same breath. And in that moment, Towley made the decision that would change their lives forever. Without caring about the curious stares, without thinking of tradition or judgment, he pulled Eleanor into his arms and kissed her, with 15 years of suppressed longing. The kiss was explosive, devastating, as though the entire universe had conspired for this single instant. Eleanor melted into him, certain at last that she was exactly where she had always belonged. Around them, the crowd erupted in cheers and applause, but all they heard was the thunder of their own hearts, beating in perfect harmony. In the weeks that followed that transformative kiss, Eleanor and Towley rediscovered each other, not as the children they had once been, but as the adults they had become. They spent hours beneath the desert stars, sharing stories of the years apart. She spoke of her battles and triumphs, of the woman she had forged herself to be. He spoke of the weight of leadership, of the struggle to preserve his people's traditions in a changing world, of the loneliness he had carried since his failed marriage. And one night, Towley revealed a truth that even Eleanor had not expected. "Do you want to know why my marriage with Itzel never worked?" he asked, staring at the constellations. "Because I could never forget a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl who once made me an impossible promise when she was 12. Itzel always sensed that a part of my heart belonged to a memory, to a dream I thought would never come true." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She had carried the weight of that love for 15 years, but now she realized she hadn't been alone. Towley had been a prisoner of the same destiny, but love never comes without trials. Eleanor's arrival and her relationship with Towley stirred mixed reactions in the community. Some celebrated their romance as a legend come to life. Others questioned whether a woman from the world of wealth and business could adapt to their simple life. Some even viewed her with suspicion, fearing her power might disrupt the community's balance. Elena knew she would have to prove herself, not with words, but with actions. Her chance came during a sudden sandstorm that swept across the region. She could have stayed safe in her comfortable hacienda. Instead, she remained at Towley's side, working alongside his tribe. Her delicate hands, used to signing million-dollar contracts, helped build shelters and care for children. Her designer clothes became covered in dust and grit, but her smile never faded. That day, even the most skeptical members of the community understood. Elena was not a rich outsider playing at love. She had chosen this place, these people, as her true family. When the storm passed and the sun lit the desert once more, Towley found her sitting quietly on her terrace, gazing at the horizon with serenity. He took her hand and asked gently, his voice full of love and genuine concern, "Are you still certain this is what you want? A simple life, far from the spotlight, far from the world you built." Eleanor turned to him with the same smile that had once enchanted a 16-year-old boy, and now conquered the 31-year-old man before her. "I built that world," she said softly, "so I could freely choose where I wanted to live. And I choose here. I choose you. I choose us." The proposal came in the most perfect way Eleanor could have dreamed. On a golden December morning, Towley led her to the very spot where she had made her promise 15 years earlier, by the river where he had once practiced with his bow. But instead of arrows piercing the target, wildflowers covered the ground, and on a smooth stone lay a new feathered headdress made especially for her. "Eleanor Mercedes," he said, kneeling before her, "you kept your promise. You returned as a strong and powerful woman. Now let me fulfill my part of the destiny you saw long before I did." He held out a simple yet beautiful ring of silver and turquoise. "Will you marry me?" Elena's answer came as tears of joy and a whispered yes that carried across the desert like a prayer answered. The ring slid onto her finger as though it had been waiting there all along. When Towley placed the delicate headdress on her golden hair, Eleanor knew she had finally found her place in the world. She was no longer the successful businesswoman of the city, nor the dreamy child of the past, but the perfect union of everything she had become. They kissed beneath the rising sun, and Eleanor felt with absolute certainty that every sacrifice, every lonely night, every struggle had been worth it. The preparations for their wedding became a celebration that magically united two worlds. Eleanor invited her closest friends and colleagues from the business sphere, people who admired her and longed to meet the man who had captured her heart. Towley ensured that the ceremony honored his Apache traditions while also reflecting Eleanor's unique spirit. The result was a wedding that blended ancestral rituals with contemporary touches, something completely new yet profoundly authentic. The celebration took place at Grandfather Diego's ranch, his heart swelling with pride as he watched his granddaughter fulfill the dream of a lifetime. During the preparations, Eleanor made a decision that even surprised Towley. She announced the creation of a foundation dedicated to preserving Apache culture and promoting educational opportunities for indigenous youth. More than that, she moved the headquarters of her company to the region, creating jobs and fueling the local economy without compromising its essence. "I didn't come here to change you," she explained to the community leaders. "I came to grow with you, to use what I learned outside to strengthen what already exists here." It was the perfect marriage of tradition and modernity, of love and responsibility. A week before the wedding, Eleanor received an unexpected visit. Itzel, Towley's ex-wife, arrived with Miguel and Sophia, their 6-year-old twins. "I came to thank you," Itzel said, her voice filled with sincerity. "My children have never been this happy. And Towley, he's become the man I once knew when we were young. You two were meant for each other, and I want you to know you have my blessing." The two women embraced, sealing an unlikely but genuine friendship built on shared love, for Towley and for the children. On the eve of her wedding, Eleanor stood alone on her terrace, gazing at the same stars that had once witnessed her childish vow. She thought about the extraordinary journey that had brought her there. 15 years of preparation, growth, victories, sacrifices, and waiting. Every scar, every triumph, every lonely night had been a step on the staircase that led her back to Towley's arms. "Thank you," she whispered to the universe, "for letting me live a love story I could never have imagined, not even in my wildest dreams." The next day, she would finally become the wife of the man she had loved since she was 12, proof that some promises are too powerful to be broken by time or distance. The wedding day dawned under a golden sky, painted as though just for them. At Diego's ranch, Eleanor dressed with the help of the Apache women who had become her friends. Her gown, designed to blend modern elegance with Apache tradition, reflected not just her beauty, but her journey. On the other side of the ranch, Towley prepared with his friends and family, wearing garments that had belonged to his grandfather, paired with touches Elena had chosen to make the ceremony their own. Miguel and Sophia ran around him, excited that Eleanor would finally, officially, be part of their family. "Papa, are you nervous?" Sophia asked. Towley smiled. For the first time in 15 years, he felt complete peace. "I'm not nervous, little one," he replied. "I'm ready, more than ready." The ceremony took place at sunset, in the exact spot where Eleanor had once made her prophetic declaration. Guests were a fascinating mix. Elegant executives seated beside Apache families in traditional attire, journalists eager to cover the wedding of the century, artisans sharing laughter with corporate leaders. When the music began, silence fell. Eleanor walked down the aisle of desert sand, her arm linked with her grandfather Diego's, who wept quietly with pride. Each step carried the weight of her 15-year promise, every heartbeat synchronized with Towley's as he waited at the altar. When their eyes met, time bent backward. She was 12 again, staring into the eyes of the boy she knew was her destiny. But now, at 27, she walked into the future she had built with her own hands. The ceremony honored both traditions. An Apache shaman and a Catholic priest presided together. But the most emotional moment came during the personal vows. Towley spoke first, his voice resonating strong and sure. "Elena, 15 years ago, a brave little girl made me a promise I treated as nothing more than childish fantasy. Today, before this extraordinary woman, I ask forgiveness for my blindness and make my own promise. I will love, honor, and protect you every day of my life, not just as my wife, but as my soulmate, my partner in every dream we will build together." There wasn't a dry eye among the guests. Then Eleanor unfolded a yellowed paper from her bouquet, the letter she had written to herself at 12, the day after she first met Towley, swearing to return, transformed. Her voice trembled as she read, "Dear Towley, I told you I would come back as a strong, independent, powerful woman, and here I am. But the truth is, all that strength, all that independence, all that power only matter if I can share them with you. You laughed at my promise, but I turned it into reality. And now I make a new promise. I will love you with the same determination that brought me back to you. I will build our family with the same dedication that built my career. And I will grow old by your side, proving that some loves truly are eternal." Even the toughest men were moved to tears. When they were finally declared husband and wife, their kiss was sealed by fireworks Eleanor had secretly arranged, the desert sky exploding with color to mirror the joy of every heart present. The celebration that followed was unforgettable. Business magnates danced with Apache children. Journalists told stories of the wedding that surpassed any work of fiction. Laughter, music, food, and dance carried on until dawn. Years later, when Elena and Towley's own children played in the same desert where she had once made her impossible vow, people still spoke of their love story, a story that defied time, distance, and fate itself. Eleanor had become not only Towley's wife, but also a respected leader in the community, using her knowledge to create opportunities without destroying tradition. Her foundation grew into a global model for cultural preservation and sustainable development. Towley, with Eleanor at his side, guided his people into the future without losing their roots. Together, they proved that true love is not just a feeling. It is a transformative force, capable of moving mountains, spanning decades, and achieving the impossible. The little girl who once whispered, "One day you'll be my husband," had become the woman who turned prophecy into reality, writing one of the most beautiful love stories the Mexican desert had ever known.